From our studios in Los Angeles and Tampa, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. Scott, we finally had the announcement that we have been waiting for, at least I've been waiting for. Dark Universe. The details of Dark Universe have been revealed to us. And my little black heart is so excited. This might be my new happy place.
I'm just going to sit back and let you fanboy out. So go on. You do, and then we'll talk. you do, boo.
You do you. Okay. So basically, we have here, I'm going to link to two different stories. One is from Attractions Magazine that gives you aerial pictures so you can see how it's actually looking, and one is the official media release. But the media release says that created by the award-winning Universal creative team in partnership with Universal Pictures, Dark Universe blends the iconic stories of unearthly legends like Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, the Bride of Frankenstein, and more with a new generation of monsters and characters, including Dr. Victoria Frankenstein, the great-great-granddaughter of the infamous Henry Frankenstein, who is continued his misguided experiments. As guests venture through Darkmoor, the ravaged village within Dark Universe, they'll encounter the creatures and subjects of those experiments within a first-of-its-kind theme park environment that offers family-friendly fun while also pushing the boundaries of intensity in a way that only Universal could achieve. The details about the land, basically, we're going to get a dark ride, we're going to get a smaller coaster, and then we'll have the makeup experience and the meet and greets plus the food venues. And the dark ride is one that I think we've known about for a while because we know people that have been working on it. It should be really cool, and we're very excited for it because, just having known it, we finally have the official storyline though that has been released by Universal. And so the dark ride storyline is that Universal Orlando's most terrifying attraction yet, the state-of-the-art dark ride takes guests deep into the catacombs of Frankenstein Manor, where Dr. Victoria Frankenstein conducts her twisted experiments. In a vain display of her genius, she invites guests into her laboratory to witness a demonstration of her ability to control monsters. But her plans go awry when her attempts to control the most dangerous of monsters, Dracula, fails, unleashing a horde of enraged monsters. Guests are then thrust into an intense ride through the darkness as they try to evade the grasp of the Wolfman, the Mummy, the creature from the Black Lagoon, the brides of Dracula, and others. And of course, that's the dark ride. Then we have Curse of the Werewolf, which is the coaster. And then we have the Darkmoor monster makeup experience, and then the meet and greet area. The makeup experience sounds very similar to the one that we talked about previously that they were testing at Universal. And at that time, Scott said that it's probably testing to put it in Dark Universe. And here we are. It's going in Dark Universe. And the food, I don't want to, read the whole press release. You guys can read it. But I'm excited most about the Burning Blade Tavern, because if you look at the concept art, it looks like there might be like actual fire that bursts out of it, similar to the dragon in the Harry Potter area, where so it's just, and it's so cool because it's like that iconic like windmill, from the Frankenstein set where it's just kind of up there, and then you're going to be able to eat inside of it and have some fire burst out. So all the concept art you all should take a look at. We know some folks that were involved in it, and it looks great. It looks phenomenal, and you can start to see now the buildings of it. But obviously, I'm just excited, as everyone I think is. I'm most excited for the dark ride. The last thing I'm going to say, just two small things, because those of you that know me, I'm never only positive. Unfortunately, it's my character flaw. But anyway, we Darkmoor. So the only thing I was like, so. For those of you, Darkmoor is actually the name of a city and a campaign in Dungeons and Dragons. It's a pretty famous campaign. So it's like I'm not sure what happened there. Did they do a deal with D&D, or did they just think they invented it, but it actually is the name of a city? Are they paying royalties? I don't know how that's going to work. So, so that might be changing. Maybe it could change in the future. The only reason I know is because I played that campaign, when I was younger. So I kind of had a little bit of deja vu when I read that release. And then the only other thing I'll say about the dark ride is, as much as I love the dark ride, it's going to be incredible. Scott and I have talked about it before, but that concept of like, the repeatability kind of breaks the story narrative, right? So if you're going through and she's showing you the lab and then the monsters like break free, that's kind of like an instance where it's not as repeatable, because if the horde breaks free every time you go in, right, it kind of breaks the storyline of the area, where the hordes are constantly breaking free. I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense. That's it. Okay. Scott, what do you think?
Well, I am excited. Not quite as excited as Philip, but I too am excited about this realm in Epic. And I think for me, from an industry standpoint, the thing that I'm looking at is when I first, and I'm discovering this as I'm seeing them do the releases of land by land by land. Originally, my concern was that Epic was a park that was too niche, that was too focused on specific target audiences, and there wasn't enough for everyone. However, what I'm learning is that is exactly what it is, and that's exactly what it should be. Because we talked about, for example, when they released the How to Train Your Dragon area, or when they've released information on each of these areas, they are very specific. They are very target audience. They are very niche market. And what they're doing is they're playing off, or it appears to me what they're doing is they're playing off the rabid fandom of these niche markets. That's why I just didn't want to say anything and let Philip just go, because he's all about this particular land. And that's great. That's exactly what it should be. One of the things that I think is also interesting is in their media announcement, they talked about riding the line between the full dark experience and something that is still family friendly. I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. One of the things that Universal they've always been the bad boy of theme parks, certainly here in Florida and pretty much worldwide, I would say. So I'm curious to see how much they push that envelope. And it's all the Disney files are going, oh crap, Universal got their villains park in before Disney did. So, we'll see how that goes. The other thing that I think is interesting to point out in this particular, with this particular element of the park, is that this is one of the few IPs that Universal actually owns. They're not leasing this one. They own it. So yes, they're going to want it to be successful, simply because they are going to want to continue to, I don't know, perhaps do future films, television shows based on, I don't know, Victoria Frankenstein. I don't know. What do I know? But as far as the repeatability, you know what? The Haunted Mansion has been the exact same story since it opened, and people still go back to see it. And it's because it is so robustly done. It is done in such a way that you always notice something slightly different, or they tweak something slightly different. Pirates of the Caribbean is exactly the same way. These are classics, and if you can have those classic moments, great. The one thing that would make it interesting is if, and the technology's there because I've ridden it in other parks, if when all hell breaks loose and all the creatures escape, if one car would follow one monster, another car follows another monster, and then they all come back together for a final story, that would be really cool. I mean, it would be a much more complex version of, say, the Scooby-Doo ride in Abu Dhabi at Warner Brothers World, so that it would have some variety. That would be amazing. That would be super cool. But is it necessary? I don't know. If it's done really well, I think that, as you say, Philip, it's going to be your new happy place, and you'll love it. The fanboys. I won't pick on you this time. The super fanboys and fangirls and fan people will love the fact that they'll be able to go 3, 2, 1. Go. It'll become sort of a Rocky Horror Picture Show version of a dark ride. I think you're going to actually get people who can call it out, and then things will happen, and they'll feel, super empowered. So I think the idea of Epic Universe, as it seems to be rolling out, is let's dive deep into these niche markets. Let's do them in a way that is going to be the reason. It's going to be the tipping point to go to the park, and then they'll enjoy the other stuff as well. Does that make sense?
Well, also because reasonably, we talked about this before, this tipping point, basically it potentially could unlock a whole new market for them, because the tipping point is not just, getting people to come to this individual thing because they're so passionate about the one area. It's also, it tips into giving them a full vacation of just Universal, because if you're like, oh, I love the Dark Universe, I would never go to Orlando except to do Dark Universe because I love monsters. Okay, you show up, but then they're going to upsell you into seeing the other Universal parks, and they're going to give you a discount. So you're like, well, I might as well, since I'm here. And then you stay on property, so you get close and you can walk in. And so then now you can have a whole trip versus, just going for Dark Universe. But it's like it's almost like a lead generator. We call it marketing. So you're using these niche things as a lead gen magnet to get them in and then upsell them.
This sounds remarkably familiar to something else that Universal has done and had great success with, Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Diagon Alley. It's the same. Yeah, they're building upon their successes, which I think is really smart. Now, whether it is Dark Universe or not that is your niche, that's not important. What is important is that they are really targeting those niches, like How to Train Your Dragon, which has a remarkably odd, after we reported on that last time, I did a little more digging, has a remarkably odd and very diverse following, because it's a lovely story. If you like stories, it's dragons, which of course appeals to everybody, and it's family friendly, which makes it so moms and dads aren't afraid of it. So it's super cool. All the gaming stuff, yes. The Potter stuff, yes. But they're all very niche, and it's, to your point, Philip, and I think we're saying exactly the same thing. It's going to be Epic Universe, it's a new park. I'd really like to. Oh, they have a what land? A land that's what? Oh, I got to go see that. It's not going to be a park where everything is for everyone. I think it's going to be a park where certain areas are for specific demographics. But while you're there, you're going to check the other stuff out too.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I think that's going to be a very interesting and unique approach. Like I said, I think they're building off of the success that they have had, because not everybody, I know it's hard to believe, but not everybody is a Potter fan or was a Potter fan when Wizarding World first opened in Orlando, and but it was enough to create six-figure bonuses for all the people who worked there. So it was clearly a success. And I think this sounds like a whole park that's being built that way.
And I do like also the kind of the depth. I think, to your point, I think it's almost like a nod that they know it's a niche thing, because it's really like, if you break it down, it's one dark ride and then one mini, it's like small kid coaster type thing, which I think you could arguably say does not a land make, right? But the monster makeup, it's one of those things where I think the rabid fans would go be all excited, and then they'll eventually buy the makeup package, and then they'll eventually do the meet and greets. So I think it's this thing where you have these extended levels to it, where the casual person probably is not going to do the makeup thing, but that's not what it's for, right? Just like the Ollivander's wand thing, it's really this depth where you can unlock more at the land. For the people that live there and are going to go multiple times, they can do one day where they get done up as a monster and then just take pictures of themselves and just hang out and interact with guests. I mean, and I think that whole concept of letting the guests have fun and then thereby entertain other guests is a thing they learned with Potter, with the wands and the robes and the magic. And, I think that is very powerful when you can basically crowdsource your entertainment.
And every Ren fair ever. So yes, it's LARPing. It's LARPing on a very basic level. And I think that, where we were talking about where Galactic Star Cruiser wasn't able to make that leap, it looks like Epic just might. So we'll see how that goes. I also think it's important to recognize, and I saw this the first time I went to Wizarding World too. If you are truly rabid about the brand, it doesn't matter that it's a dark ride, a coaster, and a place or two places to eat and merchandise. You will spend the entire day walking around, taking photos, exploring the land itself. We talked a little bit about this when we were talking about Disney Sea. Is that part of the thing that makes the base of Disney sees so impactful is the fact that it is so world building. And if they can accomplish that same thing here, then the number of attractions is going to be secondary. It's the world building that's going to be important. And you've heard me tell this story before, either on this show or even back in the day on A Scott in the Dark, where I literally stood behind people in their robes when Wizarding World opened, who came in and were sobbing because they didn't think they would ever get a chance to visit Hogwarts. And I really wanted to tell them, and you know what? You still haven't. This is a ride. But it was that kind of world building that was enough for them. They hadn't gone on the ride. They hadn't had their first butterbeer. They hadn't bought their wands. They were just sobbing because they finally made it to Hogwarts. So I think that by creating these niche markets, now I will say the biggest challenge is they got to do it right, because when you've got niche markets that target very dedicated fans, they are the first ones to point out when you screw things up.
Like I did earlier with the Darkmoor thing.
With the Darkmoor thing. Exactly, because you are that much of a fan. Now, I did not know that, and nor does it matter to me, because there's a city called Columbus in almost every state in the U.S., so I couldn't care less.
Yeah, right, but it wasn't like this is like an IP. This is like a book, that D&D had sold that has the
understood. I understand, but again, whether it is or not does not matter to me.
No, you're right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Because I am a fan, but I'm not quite as I'm not quite as drilled down as Philip is. I'm just saying.
Okay. All right. Well. Okay, so we'll move on because
you could talk about this forever.
I could. We're not going to.
Okay.
For the sake of our audience, we shall move on. So, in the whole theme, though, of kind of crowdsourcing the engagement from guests, and creating an environment where the guests can bring in a lot of entertainment and then thereby entertain other guests with what they're doing. I think that's exactly what happened at Pride Night this year at Disneyland. So I went there this year. Disneyland brought back its Pride Night, so this is year 2 of it. And it was one of the Disneyland After Dark events, which means that you could enter in as early as 6 p.m. and the official event ran from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. And, of course, it's one of those things where it's supposed to be lower crowds and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This year, they only offered it for 2 nights. It was the 18th and the 20th of June. I went on the 18th. And so here's the thing about these After Dark events. They do offer particular entertainment and decorations and whatnot, except, here's the thing, right? You just think about it. It makes sense. But basically, the bespoke entertainment for these Disney After Dark events, the entertainers really only get one rehearsal for them, because some of them are only, again, like 2 nights. So, how many times are you going to rehearse? You pay them to rehearse for something that's a few nights, right? So generally the live entertainment is not like incredible, because they only got, you might be seeing their second rehearsal basically of the thing. So it's tough. That part is tough. So what I'll say about this year sold out again. And the biggest thing to me that stood out was the guests. Again, I think you see it with Star Wars Night too, but for me, just seeing the guests themselves, people showing up in outfits and people making their own runways, just guests just doing it on their own and making their own runways and having people walk down them and take pictures. I mean, the amount of how excited the guests were made the event. Like, the guests made the event in terms of what they brought to it, the energy they brought to it, the vibe. Time and time again, you would see people talking to people out of the blue and see people that had said they'd never been to Disney in the past X amount of years, and they're only coming now because they didn't feel like they were welcome during the day. I mean, just it's a whole different crowd. And I actually thought in this case, the live entertainment was the best I'd ever seen at an After Dark event. And you could tell that these performers, A, were all in the community, and B, that they had rehearsed on their own, like, to make the shows incredible. And like, it was so, even the cavalcades, the choreography was incredible. And just it's like when every performer is on point and every performer is high-fiving people and being like, your dress is great, and just really talking to the crowd and working the crowd. It was great. It was an incredible event. But again, I think it's incredible more because of the guests than what Disney did. Disney more set the stage and then allowed the opportunity for the guests to take it.
Which is actually a huge shift in the way that theme parks used to work. There was a time where theme parks had to control every single moment of every single piece of entertainment. And I think that we are seeing a trend that we've been talking about on this show for a very long time. And that is, again, world creating. That is, give people the opportunity to play, and therefore it becomes contagious. That play becomes contagious. Now, I did not attend. I have seen many, many videos of the cavalcades, the parade, the whatever, this. And if the majority of performers were not part of the LGBTQ plus community, they certainly were allies. And I think that part of the reason that you saw the performance level go up, and I've seen it in the videos, is because they were enthusiastic about the content. They were enthusiastic. It wasn't just a job. It was something they only get to do for 2 nights. It was something that was important to them, and important enough to them that they wanted to really give it their all. So I think that's really cool. Now, I think it's interesting. I can't talk about Pride Night without rewinding the time machine, going back to the time when Disney was like, gay people, la 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 la. Nope, can't hear it. But they also recognized that the LGBTQ plus community, and this was before it was called the LGBTQ plus community, they wanted the money, they wanted the loyal attendees, but they didn't feel comfortable sanctioning an event. So this goes back to the days of what I would call the red shirt days. The community, the local community, would decide which was going to be Disney days, which was going to be gay days at Disney, and then the way you would identify yourself as either a member of the community or an ally would be to wear a red shirt, which means that you could not find a single red shirt in any of the gift shops, and it got to the point where Disney would actually put signs out front saying this is a non-sanctioned Disney event. However, it has been identified as gay days, so you and your family may see people who are part of the who are how did they phrase it? Who are experiencing the park with their same-sex partners, I believe was the way that it was phrased back then. So, kudos to Disney for actually embracing it finally. And I know this happened a while back, but it's not anything new that the LGBTQ plus community comes to Disney. They are some of the most voracious fans of the Disney product, and so Disney is recognizing it, is embracing it. And you're absolutely right, Philip, when you say that the entertainers do not get the amount of rehearsal that they do for other things, and they have to take it on their own. Even back in the day with a park that I was working at, they did a sanctioned late night gay event, and one of the singers sang a love song. They didn't even change the show. It was the same show, except for the fact that instead of singing the love song to a woman in the audience, he sang it to his boyfriend in the audience, and the audience went nuts. So the energy, just like you were saying, the energy was not necessarily provided by what the park had to offer, but the audience response to it. So I think that is a great takeaway, is to recognize if you can create an environment and get the right people there, to whether it is monster fans or whether it's members of a specific community, then your entertainment value and the energy in your experience will just skyrocket. If you can, set up the right environment, give them the tools and toys that they need, and get the hell out of their way so that guests can have a good time on their own.
Yes, that's exactly. And that's a great takeaway. I would also say encourage the cast to participate in the same way, because something I noticed, like, I think if you're looking for it, again, I'm not sure if you're looking for it, I think you see it, and it's very different. One, to your point about the singing, this year they replaced the Muse photo op with a show, and it was the Muses. That was I think a 5-person a cappella group, 3 men, 2 women, and they inverted all of the songs. So the guys sang the women parts, and they kind of did, and that drove the crowd bananas.
I can imagine.
And then during their cavalcade, which honestly was just like the same vehicles. I mean, really low effort by Disney, but the cast made it spectacular. The managers that kind of walk on the edges to make sure people aren't, walking and whatever. So they were allowed, you could tell they were allowed to kind of wear whatever they wanted. And you saw people in sequined blazers and hot pants and just not costumes, because you could tell they were not at all dressed the same or whatever. But again, those little touches where you're like, they must have been allowed to wear something outside of their normal, the normal Disney look for this event. And they stepped it up 100 times. And then they were excited. I've never seen so many managers so happy, right? And then just to engage with the community.
Yeah, 40. The last stats I heard, and I don't know whether they're still true or not, but somewhere between 30 and 40% of Disney cast members are members of the LGBTQ plus community. Yep. And at least that was the last data I had. And I don't know whether that's gone up or down, but they've always been, Disney as a company has always been very accommodating to the community, and is at the very least strong allies for the community. I will say that the one video I've seen that has just made me smile every time I see it is, and I don't remember what the character's name is. I think it's Clarabelle, the cow.
Clarabelle, yeah,
the cow.
Yeah. She was, new star of the event. Yeah,
she was dancing. she was amazing, and I am making a gross generalization here, but I would guess that the friend of Clarabelle, who was making certain that this moment happened, was having the time of their life, because you can't fake that kind of enthusiasm.
Correct.
And it was so much fun to watch. And it has the video that I've seen has gone viral. I'm sure there are others out there. But in the rainbow pleated skirt, it was a moment, and it was a moment to see a Disney character not break character, but play full out the character that they were given, and do it with such enthusiasm. So
yes, you can't fake enthusiasm. Yeah, a great performer can still not fake. Especially with the ones we have at theme parks. So if there's a way you can get them to be authentically enthusiastic, I think it will help your show.
And give them the tools to do it.
Yep. So, okay, we have a really quick one we're going to try and squeeze in here before we go. So the Epcot's multi-year transformation is finally complete. This happened last week, but we didn't have time for it, so we'll try and get in here. So the main area in Epcot has opened back up, and inside you're going to see the CommuniCore Hall, where guests can experience seasonal celebrations as well as meet Mickey and some of his closest friends. And then there's also the Plaza area, which is an outdoor area that has a stage for live entertainment. And then there's also a new garden area that's lit up with colors at night, and then you can for shade during the day. I got to see it by accident on the day that it opened. I didn't know it was the opening day of it, and I was just there. And I was like, "Oh, this is fun." My very quick notes is, I always like a place where you have live entertainment. So anything that is live entertainment is going to be a plus in my book. I like that there's a new stage now that is right by Spaceship Earth, so they can put more generic things there, so they can rotate, shows that are not necessarily IP tied or whatever. I think that's a good multi-use space for it. The other big thing I liked is that the shade. We've talked about this so many times, but I do like the garden area and how it does have natural shade, and this new stage area provides natural shade and turf for people. So I could see how they're trying to go with the idea of maybe doing like a concert at night as you walk in, where you can see behind the singers, the Spaceship Earth, and then you can sit on the turf and hang out when it gets cooler. I see this as a vibe that they're trying to build. It does look it is pretty sterile. Let me just say, like, the CommuniCore area is pretty sterile. I know that's the biggest complaint about it, but also, even if, the CommuniCore area is the hall, right? It looks kind of like a mall hall or like a hospital hall. It's pretty sparse, it's pretty like, oh, you guys could have bought this at Costco kind of a thing. But the only thing I will say in argument to that is, again, guests can go in there and sit when they're going to have a heat stroke. And for that reason, I give it a plus. Like, anything you can do to help provide areas where guests can hide during the hottest parts, and then provide natural shade, A+. So I'm giving it an A, even though it looks like it could have bought from Costco.
Well, but here's the thing. It is, yes, it is creature comfort, which we've talked about the importance of for quite some time. It make it so that guests can find shade when they need it, find cool when they need it. It is also a blank canvas that can be utilized in a bunch of different ways. So instead of having to do a complete rebuild of something that you can only change out once every 7 to 10 years, now you can change out things seasonally. And you have the infrastructure to do it, which I think is a very intelligent way of doing things. And just like we talked about, it is world building. It is building a place where people can come together, gather, rest, reflect on their day, either as a family or meeting other families. And it creates an environment where the actual element of entertainment are the guests themselves, whether they are sitting there and relaxing and reminiscing about their day or planning what tomorrow is or planning what the rest of the night is. Who knows? I once again have not been there yet, but I have seen several videos, and it looks, you're right, it looks a little sparse, but to me that just means they've got the infrastructure to build upon, and it should be, in my hopes, an ever-changing, ever-evolving experience. Speaking of an ever-evolving experience, we need to evolve away for another week, and we'll come back with a whole different idea and whole different plans. And by that, I mean Philip will write some really cool notes for next week. Again, guys, I can't tell you how much I appreciate y'all listening to us. On behalf of Philip and myself, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30, and we will see you all next week.